बाजार पॉजिटिव ट्रेड करते हुए दिख रहे हैं इस वक्त 15 अंकों पर, सेंसेक्स पर 15 ही अंकों पर, निफ्टी पर नजर आएंगे। लेकिन मिड कैप शेयरों ने बढ़त थोड़ी और बढ़ाई है अपनी, .5% से 1% तक की तेजी मिड कैप इंडेक्स में देखने को मिल रही है। स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स भी अब .5% के आसपास की मजबूती दिखाने में कामयाब। तो कुल मिलाकर शुरुआती कारोबार में यहाँ पर छोटे और मझोले शेयरों ने थोड़ी सी तेजी की कमान संभाली है। लेकिन फोकस करेंगे बड़े डेवलपमेंट्स पे जो कल देर शाम आते हुए दिखे। सेबी की बोर्ड बैठक के बाद में कुछ अहम फैसले लिए गए हैं जिसका असर काफ़ी हद तक कंपनियों पर और शेयर होल्डर्स पर भी पड़ता हुआ दिखेगा। और उसमें सबसे बड़ा फैसला है बायबैक के नियमों में बदलाव का। हमारे साथ देश की जानी मानी कंसल्टेंसी फर्म डेलोइट इंडिया के सीनियर डायरेक्टर अविनाश गुप्ता कार्यक्रम में शामिल हो रहे हैं। गुप्ता साहब, स्वागत है आपका CNBC आवाज़ पर। पहला सवाल ये कि जिस तरह से बायबैक के नियमों को थोड़ा सा कड़ा किया गया है, थोड़ा सा मुश्किल किया गया है, क्या आपको लगता है कि अब बायबैक ऑफर्स आने कम हो जाएंगे और बहुत जो सिंसियर प्लेयर्स हैं, सिंसियर प्रमोटर्स या कंपनीज हैं, वही बायबैक लेकर आएंगी?
I think जो आप बोल रहे हैं सही बोल रहे हैं. In my personal opinion, the new clarity which has been given by SEBI will lead the companies to think harder about before making a buyback announcement. SEBI has tightened, not only the time frames of it, but also in terms of financial cost and financial implication. So I think whenever there is a financial implication or a financial loss to be had, companies will be more answerable to their shareholder, to their boards, and that clearly will have an impact in terms of coming out with an announcement which may or may not be successful. So I think overall, definitely in the short term, there will be, I think, rethink in terms of people who want to do a buyback and how they want to do it. I think also more importantly in the macro environment, when you look at it today, it's not that companies have a whole lot of surplus capital or surplus cash to make buyback. So I don't think from an overall market perspective this is going to make much of a difference, because that's how the market is right now, unless prices correct so much that people want to do a buyback. But overall I don't think it's going to make a much impact in terms of specific corporates, but I think in terms of sentiment, in terms of clarity, and as a job as a regulator, I think it's all in the right direction in terms of giving more clarity and making it kind of more clear as to what corporates need to do. I think the one thing which is in the buyback regulation, which I don't know what the thesis is, and this was there in the thought paper as well, in the discussion paper as well, is the point where companies cannot raise new capital if they do a buyback. And I'm not as familiar with the detail today when I speak to you, and maybe one needs to look at it. And that is that, if a company announces a buyback, a good corporate in all good intentions might announce a buyback. But then tomorrow it may have a great opportunity of making an acquisition or doing something bigger for which it may need more capital. Now, if I have announced a buyback with all good intentions, but tomorrow if a knockdown opportunity comes for me to make a bigger play in my space, I may need to go back to shareholders and get more capital. Now, the way I read it, and I've read it before as well, is that if you've done a buyback and then you cannot raise new capital, it limits your hands. So companies who may be saying that I may do an acquisition may say, although I may be keen to do a buyback, I'll not do it because then I'm tied as well. So I think there are some things which possibly will iron out over a period of time. But overall, I think jo nikala hai SEBI ne, overall is I think very positive from a regulatory point of view.
एक और कंपनीज के पर्सपेक्टिव से यहाँ पर उन्होंने कहा है कि मैंडेटरी परचेज होना चाहिए 50% ऑफ ऑफर साइज, और साथ ही 25% आपको एस्क्रो अकाउंट में रखना होगा। क्या यहाँ पर कुछ और डिटेल्स या फिर अवेटेड है रेगुलेटर की ओर से कि ये 25% अमाउंट जो एस्क्रो में रखेंगे ये ओवर एंड अबव होगा वो 50% टोटल बायबैक के?
No, so the two clarifications really are that you need to at least buy 50% of what your intention is to buy. The escrow condition is really to just say that there is cash available to pay back the shareholders who tender their shares. So I think the two are kind of unrelated. Two percentages are unrelated. The intention is that if you're announcing a buyback, it needs to be genuine, and you need to have the right price, you need to have the right process, you need to really make the right push, so that at least 50% of the shares are tendered. The escrow really is just to give comfort to shareholders that they will get paid out, and also to SEBI and to shareholders that there is a financial commitment effectively, because there is an opportunity cost of that 25%. So the company also knows that there is something to be put out. And that links to the third thing, which basically says that if you don't achieve 50%, then you will lose part of the money as well. So then I guess there's the easier discussion to be had that if somebody's put an escrow, then that money can be fortified. If there is no money put up front, then it becomes more difficult to kind of get that at the end of the day if that condition is not fulfilled.
Mr. Gupta,
so I think overall, I think it's, I think those are two not linked.
राइट वन थिंग आई वांट टू आस्क यू, जैसा कहा है कि कम से कम आपको 50% बायबैक करना होगा और 6 महीने के भीतर करना होगा. सपोज करें कोई कंपनी ओपन मार्केट परचेज के लिए बायबैक का एक ऑफर लेकर आती है, विद इन 6 मंथ्स अगर बायबैक की जो प्राइस है, अपर लिमिट है, उससे ऊपर स्टॉक चला जाए और कंपनी 50% मिनिमम ना कर पाए, ऐसी सिचुएशन में क्या होगा?
No, I think right now I don't think there is any clarity on that currently. But if the market price is way over than the buyback price, obviously the buyback offer will not be successful. So I think as the wordings are today, as the clarity is today, the company will be liable effectively to not having made an effective buyback offer. So I think the condition really is that the buyback offer then also needs to be at an attractive price. It cannot be at a price which is suboptimal from a market point of view. So again, there's another lever which is in the fix as to companies need to think about the right price before they come back and make the offer.
और साथ ही यहाँ पर सेबी ने जो क्लब किया है FIIs, QFIs को, सब अकाउंट्स को एज अ न्यू इन्वेस्टमेंट क्लास, कितना बड़ा पॉजिटिव होगा? क्योंकि यहाँ पर these will be primarily looked at the foreign portfolio investors. तो ये क्या एक major positive है to foreign investors going forward?
No, I don't think so. In terms of, if you look at it from a money flow point of view, just from a funds flow point of view, really the large investors are, as SEBI has classified, the category 1, category 2 investors. I mean, these are the guys who will write the large checks and who have written large checks in the past, not only for India, but generally for all emerging markets. So I think the patient investors, the stronger investors, the pension funds are happy to do all the processes which need to be done in terms of setting up, and once they're set up, they're long-term investors. So I think the categorization, the simplification is really more in terms of sentiment. I don't think it's really going to make, at the margin, much of a difference in terms of the fund flow ultimately. I think the serious money, long-term money is always going to come from high-quality investors who are happy to go through the processes if they're happy with the growth in the country and the situation in the country and what's happening in the markets. I think at the fringe, investors will come and go, but those really don't move the market or make a meaningful impact in terms of the amounts of capital put in, both when they come in and both when they divest.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, thanks so much for taking your time out. आज हमारे लिए वक्त निकाल कर पूरा एनालिसिस करने के लिए. तो यहाँ पर बायबैक के नियमों से एक फ़र्क जरूर पड़ेगा कि अब जो वाकई में सिंसियर प्रोमोटर और जो शेयर को खरीदना चाहते हैं वही बायबैक लेकर आ पाएंगे. इस बीच बाजार शांत है, मिड कैप शेयर